Media fact checker. Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of Indonesian woman. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chi Kit Chong and Angie Ye Ling Lau, Malaysian nationals, are facing slavery charges in Victoria's County Court for allegedly enslaving an Indonesian woman in their Point Cook home between January and October 2022. The alleged victim, a 61-year-old Indonesian woman, was initially offered a month-long stay in early 2022 but was forced to work off a debt after Chong accused her of losing a company credit card. Chong allegedly controlled the woman's access to food, sleep, and movement, punishing her with beatings, deprivation of food, and forced sleep on stairs or in the garage. The woman was ordered to perform domestic tasks including cleaning, cooking, and massaging Chong's legs, with punishments for failure such as being hit with a vacuum cleaner or denied sleep food. The alleged victim sought help at St. Vincent's Hospital in October 2022, where medical staff documented injuries including a swollen ear, lacerations, and malnutrition indicators. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the woman was forced to sleep on the stairs or garage, while News Kamau only mentions the garage. ABC explicitly states Chong told the woman she could leave if she paid $1 million, but News Kamau does not include this specific demand. ABC references unlawful immigration status as a key factor in the woman's vulnerability, while News Kamau does not emphasize this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff pay dispute and 24-hour strike over conditions and AI concerns. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The ABC experienced a 24-hour strike last week involving over 1,000 journalists and staff, the first in 2 decades. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks met with MEAA and CPSU delegates at the Fair Work Commission on Tuesday following the strike. The ABC's new pay offer includes annual increases of 4% in the first year, 3.25% in the second, and 3.25% in the third, with back pay from October 1, 2025. The updated offer includes clearer progression pathways between pay bands, targeted performance bonuses, retention of promotion provisions, and enhanced leave entitlements. Unions, MEAA and CPSU, will consult members before a vote on the proposal, with both sources citing this as the next step. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the unions rejected an earlier offer because it included no increase to pay, while ABC notes the previous offer included a 3.5% increase in the first year, though unions called it inadequate. News Kamau does not mention the $1,000 bonus retracted in the updated offer, which ABC explicitly reports was part of the previous proposal. News Kamau does not reference the 75.6% staff vote on the previous enterprise agreement or the 395 vote shortfall mentioned in ABC's article. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TGA proposes reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations amid SPF testing controversies. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, proposed sweeping reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations in response to concerns about SPF protection claims. Choice tested 20 popular SPF 50 and SPF 50+ sunscreens in June 2023 and found 16 did not meet their advertised SPF claims, with results ranging from SPF 4 to SPF 43 instead of SPF 50+. More than a dozen sunscreens have been pulled from shelves or paused from supply in Australia due to SPF concerns, including Banana Boat Baby Zinc Sunscreen Lotion, tested at SPF 28 instead of SPF 50+, Coles SPF 50+ Sunscreen Ultra Tube, tested at SPF 43, and Ultraviolet's Australian Sunscreen, tested at SPF 4 instead of SPF 50+. Australia has the highest rates of skin cancer and melanoma globally, with around 2,000 deaths annually, according to the TGA. The TGA's proposed reforms include changes to SPF testing requirements, stronger oversight of testing laboratories, and potential replacement of SPF numbers with low, medium, high, very high ratings. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states the TGA proposed replacing SPF numbers with low, medium, high, very high ratings as an option, while Article 3, Newscomau, frames this as a definitive change without mentioning alternatives. Article 2, ABC, quotes Professor Tony Lawler saying the TGA's investigations into underperforming sunscreens would continue, but does not specify whether more recalls are imminent, whereas Article 1, ABC, does not address this ambiguity directly. Article 1, ABC, mentions the TGA's concern about exposing trade secrets if SPF testing data is made public, but Article 3, Newscomau, does not explicitly discuss this trade-off. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London and subsequent arrests. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to Hatzolah Northwest, a Jewish charity, were set on fire in Golders Green, London, on Monday around 1:45 a.m. The arson attack occurred near the Matchsike Hadath Synagogue in Golders Green, a neighborhood with a large Jewish population. 2 men, aged 45 and 47, were arrested on Wednesday on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. Commander Helen Flanagan, head of counter-terrorism policing London, stated the arrests were an important breakthrough in the investigation. Surveillance camera footage suggests at least 3 people were involved in the attack, but only 2 men have been arrested so far. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the incident is not declared a terror attack but is investigating a potential Iran-linked group claim, while Guardian sources do not mention this specific investigation detail. ABC describes the attack as consuming the ambulances and shattering community security, while Guardian articles focus on factual reporting without such descriptive language. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Romanian nationals charged in Queensland for targeting elderly shoppers in wallet theft scams. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 Romanian nationals, 2 men aged 49 and 42, 1 woman aged 29, were arrested in 8 Mile Plains on the 28th of March, 2024 for allegedly stealing from elderly victims at Queensland shopping centres. The trio allegedly targeted elderly people, aged 70 to 94, at ATMs or grocery payments in Kenmore, Chermside, Strathpine, North Lakes, Buddina, Caloundra, and Laidley shopping centres. Victims were distracted by claims of dropped wallets, then had their cards stolen for fraudulent use. Police seized approximately $20,000 from a unit complex in 8 Mile Plains during the arrests. The 49-year-old man and 29-year-old woman were charged with multiple counts of fraud and stealing, 5 counts of fraud, 4 counts of stealing, and 2 counts of enter with intent for the 49-year-old, 8 counts of fraud and 4 counts of stealing for the 29-year-old, and refused bail. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the 49-year-old man was charged with 2 counts of enter with intent, but Newscomau does not mention this charge. ABC lists Strathpine as a location where victims were targeted, but Newscomau does not explicitly mention it, though it lists 7 suburbs including Kenmore, Chermside, etc. ABC mentions the arrests occurred on Saturday without specifying the date, while Newscomau states the arrests were on the 28th of March, 2024, ABC only confirms court appearances on the 28th of March. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. North Korea's cyber espionage and fraud operation targeting Australian firms via fake IT jobs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. North Korea's regime is using a 1,000-strong army of agents posing as remote IT workers to infiltrate Western companies, with the UN estimating this operation nets the regime $800 million annually. ASIO Director General David Burgess confirmed North Korean operatives are targeting Australian firms to funnel salaries back to Pyongyang, with major banks like NAB already infiltrated. A Melbourne University alumnus-turned-suspected regime intermediary has been identified by Australian Federal Police cyber threat teams. DTX's Mohan Koo estimated dozens of Australian firms are already compromised, warning the situation could explode quickly, citing the US experience where firms have unwittingly hired North Korean agents for a decade. Christina Chapman, a US laptop farmer, was jailed for 8.5 years after funneling $17 million to North Korea by hosting computers for dozens of North Korean operatives hired by over 300 US firms including Boeing, NBC, and Nike. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between sources, as Thej does not provide any distinct information beyond SMH. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government urges Fair Work Commission for minimum wage increase above inflation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Albanese government submitted to the Fair Work Commission's annual wage review asking for an economically sustainable real wage increase for 2.7 million minimum wage and award-reliant workers in Australia. About 2.7 million Australians, roughly a quarter of the workforce, are on the national minimum wage or award-reliant jobs. The current minimum wage is $175.40 per week, higher than when the Albanese government took office in 2022. The Fair Work Commission's wage determinations take effect from July 1 each year. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, raised the official cash rate to 4.1% on March 17, 2026, marking the second consecutive hike in 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the minimum wage is currently $175.40 per week, higher than in 2022, while ABC does not provide a direct comparison to 2022 but focuses on the current rate of $948 per week. News Kamau does not mention specific wage increase percentages proposed by unions or business groups, whereas ABC explicitly states the ACTU wants 5% and ACCI wants 3.5%. News Kamau does not reference the Fair Work Commission's past determinations, 3.75% in 2024 and 3.5% in 2025, which ABC highlights as context for the current review. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democratic gains in Florida state legislative race near Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Emily Gregory, a Democrat, defeated Republican John Maples in Florida's 87th State House District special election on 2024-10-20, winning by 2.4 percentage points, 797 votes. The district includes Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach County, where the previous Republican incumbent won by 19 percentage points in 2024. Donald Trump endorsed Maples and voted by mail in the election despite publicly criticizing mail-in voting as fraudulent. Democrats have flipped 29 state legislative seats since Trump's 2025 election, per statements from Heather Williams, DLCC president. The Associated Press called the Florida 87th district race for Gregory on 2024-10-20, with a 2.4% margin. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian's first article states Trump urged voters to back Maples, while ABC's headline omits this detail, focusing only on Trump's endorsement. The Guardian's second article cites Florida's independent voters as a wild card, 3.3M+, but ABC does not mention this demographic's potential impact. The Guardian's first article claims Maples describes himself as an America First patriot, direct quote, while ABC does not attribute this phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sheffield Shield Final, South Australia vs Victoria title decider at Junction Oval. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Sheffield Shield final was played between Victoria and South Australia at Melbourne's Junction Oval. Victoria finished top of the table with 7 wins from 10 matches in the regular season. South Australia was the reigning champion and aimed to win back-to-back titles for the first time. South Australia won the Sheffield Shield final by 56 runs after Victoria was bowled out for 139 on day 5. Victoria needed 196 runs to win but was dismissed for 139 on day 5. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Victoria lost their last 5 wickets for 27 runs, but no other source confirms this specific detail. The Guardian states Victoria lost their last 7 wickets for 37 runs, while ABC sources do not mention this detail. The Guardian highlights Scott Boland's hat-trick, 7-122, and the dramatic turnaround after McAndrew's partnership, but ABC headlines do not provide this context. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. California sheriffs disputed voter fraud investigation and ballot seizures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chad Bianco, Riverside County Sheriff and Republican gubernatorial candidate, seized 650,000 ballots from the November 2023 special election on Proposition 50. Bianco ordered additional seizures of 426 boxes of ballot materials earlier this week as part of a criminal investigation into alleged voter fraud. The Riverside Election Integrity Team claimed a discrepancy of 45,896 votes between official results and handwritten counts, while state officials confirmed the actual difference was only 103 votes. Rob Bonta, California's Democratic Attorney General, filed a lawsuit against Bianco, accusing him of obtaining facial insufficient evidence for search warrants and violating directives to halt the investigation. Shirley Weber, California's Secretary of State, condemned Bianco's actions as based on allegations that lack credible evidence and risking public confidence in elections. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Bianco willfully violated Bonta's directives and continued his investigation despite orders to pause, while Article 2 reports Bianco halted the investigation due to legal pressure. Article 1 claims Bonta's lawsuit argues Bianco's search warrants were facial insufficient, but Article 2 does not mention this specific legal claim. Article 1 attributes a quote to Bonta stating there is no indication, anywhere in the United States, of widespread voter fraud, while Article 2 does not include this exact quote. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Stephen Colbert to co-write a new Lord of the Rings film titled Shadow of the Past. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stephen Colbert is co-writing a new Lord of the Rings film titled The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past with his son Peter McGee and Philippe Arboyans. The film is set 14 years after the events of The Lord of the Rings trilogy and follows Sam, Merry, and Pippin retracing early steps of their adventure. Sam's daughter Eleanor discovers a long-buried secret explaining why the War of the Ring was nearly lost before it began. Peter Jackson announced Colbert's involvement in a video released on social media on April 2024. Colbert's The Late Show on CBS aired its final episode on May 21, 2024, after cancellation in July 2023. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the original trilogy grossed over $2.9 billion worldwide, while The Guardian's second article claims the combined total for all 6 Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films is $5.9 billion. ABC does not specify the exact combined figure. The Guardian's first article suggests the film may be an April Fool's joke due to timing, while ABC and The Guardian's second article treat it as a legitimate announcement. ABC does not mention the political controversy around CBS's cancellation of The Late Show which The Guardian's second article highlights as a key context for Colbert's newfound freedom. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia investigates social media firms for under-16s ban compliance failures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube are under investigation for potential non-compliance with Australia's under-16 social media ban, Guardian, ABC, News Corp, SBS. The eSafety Commission will release a compliance update on Tuesday detailing alleged failures by platforms, Guardian, ABC, News Corp, SBS. Anika Wells, Communications Minister, stated fines of up to $49.5 million Australian dollars, $33.9 million US dollars, could be imposed for systemic non-compliance, Guardian, ABC, News Corp, SBS. Over 4.7 million social media accounts were deactivated or restricted in the first days after the ban, Guardian, News Corp. Meta, Facebook, Instagram, reported closing 550,000 accounts under the ban, while Snapchat and TikTok combined closed 665,000, News Corp. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 31% of parents said their children still had social media accounts post-ban, Article 1, while News Corp does not provide a comparable parental survey figure. Meta claims age verification is challenging due to natural error margins, Guardian, Article 1, but eSafety Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant's quote in ABC, Article 3, does not contradict this. It focuses on teething issues rather than error margins. The Guardian states TikTok and Google did not respond to comments by publication time, Article 1, while ABC and News Corp do not mention this lack of response. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Man accused of alleged terrorist bomb attack at WA Invasion Day rally pleads mental health defence. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Liam Alexander Hall, 32, is accused of allegedly throwing a homemade bomb, glass container with liquid, screws, and ball bearings, into a crowd of about 2,500 people at an Invasion Day rally in Perth CBD on January 26, 2026. The device did not detonate, causing no injuries but prompting evacuations and widespread outrage, particularly among Indigenous Australians. Hall faces charges including engaging in a terrorist act, making or possessing explosives under suspicious circumstances, and intent to harm or endanger life. Hall's lawyer, Simon Freitag, has indicated a potential Section 27, insanity, defence plea, requiring a psychiatric assessment. Hall is currently detained at Perth's Franklin Centre, a criminal psychiatric facility, awaiting a psychiatric report. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Hall did not appear in person at the Perth Magistrates Court on Tuesday, while The Guardian says he was scheduled to appear via video link but did not. The Guardian mentions Hall's remand date as May 27, 2026, but News Kamau states the next hearing is on May 26, 2026. ABC reports Hall was accused of engaging in a terrorist act, doing an act likely to endanger life or safety, and possessing explosives under suspicious circumstances, while The Guardian adds a third charge, intent to harm or doing an act which could endanger the life, health, or safety of any person, though this is essentially the same as ABC's endanger life or safety. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fungal infection outbreak at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital linked to hospital balcony and construction. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Royal Prince Alfred Hospital's transplant unit, Ward 9E, experienced a fungal outbreak in late 2025 linked to aspergillosis mold, killing 2 patients and seriously infecting 4 others. A balcony near construction work was identified as the probable source of the mold exposure, accessible by all 6 infected patients. 6 transplant patients were diagnosed with aspergillosis between November and December 2025, with 2 deaths directly attributed to the infection. Construction on the hospital's $900 million redevelopment was occurring adjacent to the balcony during the outbreak. NSW Health released a final report on Friday, May 2026, confirming the balcony and construction activities as the greatest exposure risk. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the fourth patient remains in intensive care 4 months on, no specific date, while ABC specifies 3 months after being diagnosed. ABC mentions the third patient died from multi-organ failure due to sepsis associated with a skin condition, but News Kamau does not specify the cause of death beyond seriously infecting 4 patients. News Kamau does not mention the $900 million redevelopment cost or the SAER referral process, which ABC explicitly includes. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Israeli drone strike killing Australian aid worker Zomi Francom and 6 colleagues in Gaza, ongoing investigation and family demands for justice. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zomi Francom, 43, an Australian aid worker for World Central Kitchen, was killed in an Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) drone strike on April 1, 2024, alongside 6 other aid workers from Australia, Britain, and Poland in Gaza. The IDF acknowledged the strike violated its rules of engagement and dismissed 2 officers while reprimanding 3 others. Former Australian Defence Chief Mark Binskin conducted an independent review in 2024, concluding there was a significant breakdown in situational awareness and that the deaths resulted from serious failures to follow IDF procedures. Binskin's report stated the strike was not knowingly or deliberately directed against the World Central Kitchen convoy but resulted from errors in decision-making and misidentification, likely compounded by confirmation bias. The Francom family has not received a personal apology or compensation from Israel, and the investigation remains stalled 2 years after the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, reports Hillel Newman said he was not aware the investigation was shelved, while the ABC, Article 2, frames Newman's statement as a denial that the investigation was abandoned, implying he explicitly denied it was shelved. The ABC states the IDF dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others over the strike, but the Guardian does not specify the number of officers reprimanded beyond 3 others. The Guardian, Article 3, quotes Hillel Newman dismissing claims of over 200 journalists killed in Gaza as exaggerated, while the CPJ and Reporters Without Borders, cited in The Guardian, provide specific, lower but verified numbers, 86 and 29, for 2024 to 2025. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran war support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia for its response to US requests for military support in securing the Strait of Hormuz during the Iran conflict, calling Australia not great and stating he was a little surprised by its refusal to send vessels or troops. ABC, Guardian, News.com.au. Australia offered a joint statement to contribute to efforts protecting the Strait of Hormuz but did not send military assets, instead providing defensive support to the UAE, including a surveillance aircraft and missiles. ABC, News.com.au. Trump accused UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer of offering to send aircraft carriers when the war was over, which Trump dismissed as toys and unnecessary, stating we don't need it. ABC, Guardian. Trump claimed Iran was begging to make a deal and presented a 15-point ceasefire proposal, which an Iranian official described as one-sided and unfair. ABC. Trump mentioned a mystery present from Iran, 8 oil-laden boats flying Pakistani flags, as a gesture of goodwill, though Iran has not confirmed this offer. ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump claimed Iran had offered 8 big boats of oil as a gesture of goodwill, but Iran has not confirmed this offer and The Guardian does not mention this claim. ABC states Trump said Iran had launched strikes against Israel, US bases, and Gulf states since February 28, while The Guardian and News.com.au do not provide this specific timeline or detail of Iranian strikes. ABC includes Trump's direct quote about Iran being their worst nightmare if they don't agree to the ceasefire, while The Guardian and News.com.au do not repeat this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Massive theft of Nestlé's KitKat shipment in Europe ahead of Easter. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A truck carrying 413,793 units of KitKat's new Formula 1 chocolate range was stolen in transit in Europe on the 26th of March, 2024. The stolen shipment weighed approximately 12 tons and was en route from a factory in central Italy to Poland. Nestlé confirmed the theft to AFP and is investigating with local authorities and supply chain partners. The stolen KitKats are part of a new chocolate range mold after race cars, launched as KitKat's official F1 sponsor. Nestlé warned stolen bars could enter unofficial markets and can be traced via batch codes on individual bars. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the statement was shared with The Athletic, but News.com.au does not reference The Athletic as a source for any details. News.com.au clarifies the shortage would only impact Europe, while The Guardian does not explicitly state this limitation. The Guardian attributes the Formula 1 line description to The Athletic, but News.com.au does not attribute it to any third party. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Police investigation into stolen car crash involving teen assault on paramedic in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3, stolen from Mulgrave on March 21st, collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 4 teenage males were travelling in the stolen Mazda 3, 2 fled the scene immediately after the crash. A 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured in the crash and taken to hospital by ambulance. A 66-year-old man and a 76-year-old woman from Terang were in the Volkswagen and taken to hospital as a precaution. The 15-year-old boy assaulted a paramedic during transport to hospital, requiring treatment for their injuries. But not all outlets told the same story. News.com.au states the 19-year-old man assaulted the paramedic, while ABC states the 15-year-old boy assaulted the paramedic. ABC mentions 2 teenagers are in custody and 2 are on the run, while News.com.au only mentions a 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured, no mention of custody. ABC includes the detail that the paramedic was injured and needed treatment, which is not explicitly stated in News.com.au. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Traveller defies advice to avoid Barcelona due to pickpocketing fears and enjoys the city despite initial warnings. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The author was advised by a backpacker in a London hostel, early 2000s, to avoid Barcelona due to pickpocketing risks and apocryphal stories of wallet thefts. The author initially followed precautions like leaving valuables in their room or using a hidden travel wallet while in Barcelona. The author mentions Las Ramblas and the Gothic Quarter as areas of concern for potential theft. The author has visited Barcelona multiple times and considers it a place of charm and culture. The author references TripAdvisor as a source of conflicting travel opinions. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 articles as they are identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's Matildas facing low-ranked teams in April 2024 FIFA series ahead of 2027 World Cup. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Matildas will play Malawi, ranked 153, in Nairobi on April 10, 2024, as part of the FIFA Series 2026. If victorious, Australia will face the winner of India, ranked 67, versus Kenya, ranked 134, on April 14, 2024. Australia is ranked 15th in the FIFA Women's Rankings, while Malawi, India, and Kenya have never qualified for a Women's World Cup. Football Australia cited limited availability of top-tier opponents due to other nations' qualifying commitments for major tournaments. Coach Joe Montemurro stated the team needs more regular, top international competition ahead of the 2027 Women's World Cup in Brazil. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian calls the April window a calamity from all angles, while the ABC frames it as a good opportunity to test depth and adaptability. The Guardian suggests the games may yield nothing in terms of learning for Montemurro's World Cup preparation, but the ABC highlights potential benefits like testing different playing styles. The Guardian implies FA's decision was made without proper consultation, whereas the ABC presents it as a pragmatic response to scheduling constraints. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrest of Declan Donnelly in Sydney grandfather's mistaken identity kidnapping and murder case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Declan Donnelly, 23, was arrested on March 6 at a Seven Hills home and charged with murder and kidnapping of Chris Bagsarian, an 85-year-old grandfather mistakenly abducted from North Ryde on February 13. Bagsarian's body was found near a golf course in Pitt Town on February 24, 11 days after his abduction. Donnelly was found wearing only his underwear during his arrest, with an sawn-off shotgun allegedly hidden under his bed at the Seven Hills property. Donnelly faces charges including murder, kidnapping with intent to ransom, possessing an unauthorized firearm, and multiple drug supply offenses. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged with Bagsarian's murder and kidnapping on March 5 and remain in custody. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Donnelly allegedly murdered Bagsarian between February 13 morning and 9 p.m. on February 14, while ABC does not specify a timeline for the murder and SMH omits this exact timeframe. News Kamau lists 3 counts of drug supply: heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, cannabis, but ABC and SMH do not specify the exact drugs charged beyond prohibited drugs or drug supply offenses. SMH claims Donnelly was contracted to kidnap the father of Dimitri Stepanyan and lived 3 doors down from Bagsarian, while News Kamau and ABC do not mention the contracted aspect or proximity detail. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former AFL player Nick Stevens convicted of fraud in pool installation scheme. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nick Stevens, 46, was found guilty of 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document in relation to pool installations in Mildura, Victoria, in 2017. Stevens was acquitted on 1 charge of obtaining a financial advantage by deception relating to the first victim's part payment in 2017. Stevens defrauded 6 families out of a total of $171,000 for pools that were never legally installed or completed. 4 families were left out of pocket, 1 received a full refund, and another received a partial refund. Stevens worked as a distributor for leisure pools and operated a landscaping business while allegedly taking payments for pools he never installed. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Stevens' barrister Jim Stavris argued bail should remain extended, while ABC does not mention this specific argument in its summary of the bail hearing. News Kamau reports Stevens suggested his ex-partner may have sent the doctored screenshot, while ABC does not mention this detail. News Kamau claims Stevens had ongoing contact with Brian McDonnell for permits despite McDonnell testifying he had no involvement, while ABC only briefly references McDonnell's role without elaborating on the conflict. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's 2026 Daylight Saving Time change ending in April. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daylight saving ends on Sunday, April 5, 2026, in NSW, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, the ACT, and Norfolk Island. Clocks turn back 1 hour at 3 a.m. local time to 2 a.m. on April 5, 2026, giving residents an extra hour of sleep. Queensland, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Christmas Island, and the Cocos, Keeling, Islands do not observe daylight saving. Daylight saving in Australia begins again on Sunday, October 4, 2026. The end of daylight saving occurs on the first Sunday of April annually. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states daylight saving ends on Easter Sunday 2026, April 5, but News Kamau does not explicitly mention Easter as the date. News Kamau mentions Queensland and WA have rejected daylight saving via referendums, while ABC does not specify the method of rejection. ABC notes the US and UK have different daylight saving start-end dates, but this is not a contradiction, it's comparative context. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel crisis from Middle East conflict impacts daily life and economy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Petrol prices in Australia reached an average of $2.38 per litre for regular unleaded in the week ending March 20th, up 27% since the war began on February 28, according to the Australian Institute of Petroleum, AIP. Diesel prices in nearly every Australian capital city surpassed $3 per litre, with a 38 to 40% increase since the US-Israeli strikes on Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, reducing global oil trade by 20%. Consumer confidence in Australia dropped to 63.1 points in March, the lowest since records began in the 1970s, per ANZ Roy Morgan, due to soaring energy prices and cost of living concerns. The Strait of Hormuz closure disrupted 20% of global oil trade, leading to widespread fuel shortages and price surges in Australia. Hundreds of service stations across Australia have run out of fuel, with restrictions like $30 jerrycan limits imposed in rural areas. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Dennis Maddox fuel costs increased significantly with no government guidance on pricing or supply, while The Guardian's tour operator in Darwin explicitly blames the government for failing to address the US-Israel war's role in the crisis. ABC highlights a 38 to 40% diesel price increase since the war, but The Guardian does not provide a specific percentage increase for diesel, only mentioning $2.55 per litre for 98 octane in one case. The Guardian's rural petrol station worker mentions running out of 95 octane fuel, while ABC does not mention octane-specific shortages beyond general diesel petrol scarcity. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. F1 safety crisis after Oliver Bearman's high-speed crash at Japanese GP. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Oliver Bearman crashed at the Japanese Grand Prix, Suzuka Circuit, after evading Franco Colapinto's Alpine due to a closing speed of 50 km per hour, 31 miles per hour. Bearman's Haas was traveling at 190 miles per hour, 307 km per hour when he hit the barriers at a 50G impact, escaping with only bruising. The crash occurred because Bearman was using boost mode, electrical power, while Colapinto was recovering energy, creating a speed differential. Haas team principal Ayao Komatsu called the incident a lucky escape and stated, "Yes, it could have been a lot worse." Carlos Sainz, Williams, warned before the season that such closing speeds and accidents were inevitable under the new regulations. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Bearman's speed was 190 miles per hour, while Guardian Article 2 reports 307 km per hour, 191 miles per hour. The latter is more precise, but both agree on 190 miles per hour. Guardian Article 2 implies Colapinto did not cut across Bearman, but ABC does not specify defensive line details beyond Bearman's evasive action. ABC describes Bearman as limping away, while Guardian sources emphasize he was absolutely fine with only bruising. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government finalises 2032 Brisbane Olympics rowing venue at Rockhampton's Fitzroy River. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rockhampton's Fitzroy River has been selected as the sole venue for Olympic rowing at the 2032 Games, with no alternative sites under consideration, Newscamau, ABC. Deputy Premier Jared Bleegey confirmed the Fitzroy River venue will be a permanent legacy facility, not temporary, and is included within the $7.1 billion budget, Newscamau, ABC. World Rowing President Jean-Christophe Roland and International Canoeing Federation President Thomas Konietzko publicly endorsed the Fitzroy River as the venue, ABC, Newscamau. The preferred field of play for the Fitzroy River venue includes a full 2-kilometre competition course with a southern finish line downstream toward the Fitzroy Barrage, Newscamau, ABC. The Games Independent Infrastructure and Coordination Authority, JICA, will oversee construction of the Victoria Park Stadium site, with fencing and earthworks beginning by June 1, Newscamau, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau states the Fitzroy River upgrade cost will not exceed $500 million but does not provide an alternative figure, while ABC does not mention a specific cost range or confirmation of the $500 million claim. Newscamau explicitly rejects reports about temporary infrastructure for the Fitzroy River venue, while ABC does not directly address the temporary vs permanent infrastructure debate beyond mentioning legacy planning. Newscamau confirms the Brisbane Arena contract will be awarded by the end of the year with construction starting in 2027, but ABC does not provide details on the timeline for contract awards or construction start dates. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tottenham Hotspur fires interim manager Igor Tudor amid relegation crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tottenham Hotspur parted ways with interim manager Igor Tudor after 7 league matches and 44 days in charge. Tudor was hired on February 14, 2024, with a contract until the end of the season. Tottenham lost 5 of Tudor's 7 league matches, including a 3-0 home defeat to Nottingham Forest on March 22, 2024. The club sits 1 point above relegation with 7 games remaining in the Premier League season. Tottenham's 50-year top-flight streak is at risk due to their current position. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Tudor lost 5 of his 7 league matches, while The Guardian says he took 1 point from 5 league matches, implying 4 losses. ABC mentions Tudor's first match was a 4-1 loss to Arsenal, but The Guardian does not specify the result of Tudor's first match. ABC lists Roberto De Zerbi, Eddie Hutter, Sean Dyche, Ryan Mason, and Harry Redknapp as potential replacements, while The Guardian does not mention Redknapp or Mason. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arsenal's 3-1 WSL win over Tottenham featuring Alessia Russo's hat-trick and tactical analysis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Arsenal defeated Tottenham 3-1 in the Women's Super League at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday. Alessia Russo scored a hat-trick in the first 27 minutes for Arsenal, including goals at 4 foot, 11, and 19, or 22 in Article 1. Tottenham conceded 2 goals in the opening 10 minutes, including a Frida Lenhardsson-Marnum own goal at 29 foot, Article 1, or 22, Article 2. Arsenal's 25th and 26th goal contributions came from Russo in 31 games, placing her 4th in WSL scoring charts. Renee Sledgers praised Russo as a complete footballer and one of the best finishers she's seen. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Russo's hat-trick took 22 minutes, while Article 2 states it took 27 minutes, with goals at 4, 11, and 19. Article 1 reports Marnham's own goal at 29 minutes, but Article 2 reports it at 22 minutes. Article 1 lists Russo's hat-trick goals as a header from McCabe's corner, a low drive past Kopp, and a penalty area finish, while Article 2 describes the 11 goal as a classy finish after walking past Kopp. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Saudi Arabia's push for US to escalate military campaign against Iran amid regional war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, urged Donald Trump not to cut short the US-Israeli war on Iran, calling it a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, both articles, Guardian. Saudi Arabia has not yet joined the war directly despite weighing military involvement, both articles, Guardian. Trump confirmed MBS's role as a warrior fighting alongside the US, stating "Yeah, he's fighting with us," both articles, Guardian. Iran launched a drone attack on Saudi Arabia's Yanbu oil refinery on the Red Sea coast, both articles, Guardian. Saudi Arabia and Iran have long been regional rivals, with Saudi Arabia claiming Sunni leadership and Iran Shia leadership, both articles, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention Saudi Arabia's 2023 China-brokered détente with Iran, while Article 2 explicitly states this as context for MBS's current position. Article 1 implies Saudi Arabia is not reacting impulsively without direct quotes, while Article 2 attributes this phrasing to Saudi analyst Mohammed Alhamd. Article 1 does not reference the UAE's call for a decisive military defeat of Iran, Wall Street Journal quote, while Article 2 includes it as a key regional stance. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz shipping during US-Israel war on Iran. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Iran has reduced daily ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz by about 95% since February 28, from a pre-war average of 138 vessels day to roughly 5 to 6 large vessels day, ABC, or fewer than 40 vessels exiting in March, Guardian. Iran is enforcing a selective closure or toll booth regime, directing vessels through a new northern shipping corridor near Iranian waters, ABC, Guardian. Iran has allowed passage for non-sanctioned or non-hostile vessels, including those owned by China, India, Greece, UAE, and Marshall Islands, ABC, Guardian. At least 2 ships have reportedly paid Iran a transit fee of $2 million each for passage through the strait, ABC, Guardian. Iran's crude oil exports have remained relatively stable, averaging 1.6 million barrels a day from March 1 to 23, ABC, despite the blockade. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Iran charges $2 million per ship as a transit fee, while The Guardian does not specify a fee amount but confirms at least 2 vessels paid, one reportedly $2 million. ABC states about 5 to 6 large vessels move daily through the strait, while The Guardian notes a slight uptick on one day, Thursday, but no return to normal commercial navigation. ABC claims India has a preference for negotiating with Tehran, while The Guardian does not explicitly state India's diplomatic stance beyond mentioning efforts. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 men acquitted of raping intoxicated woman picked up while waiting for Uber in Darwin. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Panormitis Charalampis and Michael Vruvis were charged with 4 counts each of sexual intercourse without consent in the Northern Territory Supreme Court. The incident occurred on January 14, 2024, after the woman left Mayberry nightclub in Darwin's CBD at approximately 3:30 a.m. The woman ordered an Uber but was picked up by Charalampis and Vruvis outside the nightclub, believing them to be her Uber drivers. The men were acquitted unanimously after nearly 7 hours of jury deliberation. The woman's blood alcohol concentration was estimated between 0.1 and 0.15 when she reached her apartment block with the men. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the woman's BAC was between 0.1 and 0.15, while Article 2 states it was between 0.2 and 0.1, likely a typo in Article 2, but inconsistent phrasing. Article 1 reports the woman passed out in the car and required assistance walking, but Article 2 describes her as crawling and falling out of a car, laying on the ground, unable to walk without being carried. Article 1 notes the woman believed the men were her Uber driver and his friend, while Article 2 does not mention this belief explicitly. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Ilya Malinin's redemption at the 2024 Figure Skating World Championships after Olympic free skate collapse. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ilya Malinin won the 2024 Figure Skating World Championships in Prague's O2 Arena on Saturday, April 2024. Malinin led after the short program with a personal best score of 111.29 points, over 9 points ahead of the field. Malinin's free skate score was 218.11, finishing with a total of 329.40 points. Yumi Kageyama of Japan finished second with 306.67 points, Shun Soto third with 288.54 points. Malinin's Olympic free skate in Milan ended in disaster with 2 falls, dropping him from first to 8th place. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Malinin's Olympic free skate was disastrous with glaring mistakes, while Article 2 describes it as one of the biggest upsets in Olympic figure skating history without emphasizing disaster. Article 1 does not mention Malinin's backflip in the free skate, while Article 2 explicitly states he landed a backflip late in the program. Article 1 does not mention Malinin's personal best free skate score surpassing Kageyama's by nearly 23 points, while Article 2 emphasizes this margin. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's waste sector faces diesel shortages threatening service disruptions and public health risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Waste collectors are receiving reduced diesel allocations, e.g., a NSW operator's 50,000 L fortnightly order was cut to 12,000 L, ABC, News Kamau. WA waste operators expect only about half their regular diesel allocations at next refill, ABC, News Kamau. The federal government temporarily lowered diesel standards, flashpoint threshold, on the 18th of June, 2024 to allow imports from the US, Canada, and Europe, ABC, News Kamau. Waste industry leaders, Brett Lemon of NSW, Alison Price of Queensland, Mike Bobrowicz of WA, are meeting Assistant Environment Minister Josh Wilson in Canberra, ABC, News Kamau. Hospitals, aged care, and supermarkets would face health risks within 48 hours if waste services stopped, ABC, News Kamau. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports waste collectors are operating at a loss and some may trigger force majeure clauses at $4 per litre diesel, but News Kamau does not mention this financial threshold. ABC states multiple members in Queensland have received less than half their fuel allocations, while News Kamau only cites multiple members without specifying the reduction percentage. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Flooding in Northern Territory's Katherine and surrounding areas due to ex-tropical cyclone Narelle. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ex-tropical cyclone Narelle caused severe flooding in the Northern Territory, particularly in Katherine, this month. Katherine River peaked at 19.2 meters in early March, marking the town's worst flood in nearly 30 years, 28 years. The Katherine River fell just below the 17.5-meter major flood level on Thursday morning in Article 1, with Article 2 confirming it was expected to exceed the major flood level again on Wednesday. Daly River now EU remains under prolonged major flooding, with water levels expected to stay above major flood levels for the rest of March. Boil water alerts were issued for Batchelor, Numbulwar, Gilkmingan, and Adelaide River, later lifted as flood threats decreased. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Katherine River peaked just above 17.5 meters on Thursday morning, while Article 2 states the river was expected to exceed the major flood level, 17.5 m, early Wednesday morning. Article 1 says the river is now a few centimeters below the 17.5 meter major flood level, but Article 2 states the river could again reach the major flood level on Wednesday. Article 1 reports the peak at Katherine would flow downstream and feed into the major flood level at Nauiu Daly River, while Article 2 does not mention this specific downstream impact. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Meta ordered to pay $375 million in New Mexico child exploitation case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A New Mexico jury found Meta liable for violating New Mexico's consumer protection law in a case alleging misleading claims about child safety on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. $375 million, $538 million including penalties, was ordered as civil payment by the jury under New Mexico's consumer protection laws. The trial lasted 6 weeks, with jury deliberation taking less than 1 day before the verdict. New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres accused Meta of enabling child sexual exploitation and prioritizing profits over child safety. Meta plans to appeal the verdict and stated it works to keep users safe despite challenges in identifying harmful content. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the state sought over $2 billion in damages, while The Guardian does not mention this figure. The Guardian highlights Meta's encryption of Facebook Messenger as a key issue blocking crime evidence, but ABC does not emphasize this. ABC mentions Meta's lawyer arguing the company did not knowingly lie, while The Guardian focuses more on internal warnings and whistleblower testimony as evidence of deception. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US directs embassies to counter foreign disinformation using X and military psychological ops. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US directed all American embassies and consulates to launch coordinated campaigns against foreign propaganda, per a cable signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio on March 29, 2024, obtained by The Guardian. The cable instructs embassies to use Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, and its Community Notes feature as an innovative tool to counter anti-American propaganda without compromising free speech or privacy. The US is targeting disinformation from Iran, Russia, and China, with Iran's state disinformation apparatus described as one of the world's most sophisticated and prolific in the cable. The cable coordinates embassy efforts with the US military's Psychological Operations Unit, MISO, formerly PSYOP, part of the Pentagon. The US is repositioning over 700 American spaces, cultural centers, libraries, and exchange hubs, globally as platforms for uncensored information and free speech zones. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney private school teacher charged with grooming and child abuse material offences. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Benjamin David Collinge, a 29-year-old casual music teacher at Newington College, was arrested on March 28, 2024, at an address in Beecroft, Sydney's north, for allegedly grooming a 14-year-old girl and accessing child abuse material. Collinge allegedly posed as a 17-year-old boy online to contact the vulnerable 14-year-old girl via a social media app affected by the Commonwealth's under-16 social media ban. Collinge offered the girl a not significant amount of money in exchange for sexually explicit material, with multiple messages exchanged between them. Police found child abuse material on an electronic device during a search of Collinge's Beecroft home. Collinge was charged with using a carriage service to groom someone under 16 and using a carriage service to access child abuse material. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Collinge was arrested at an address in Beecroft, while ABC does not specify the exact suburb beyond Sydney's north. SMH mentions Collinge was arrested on Thursday, implied March 28, but ABC does not explicitly state the day of the week for the arrest. SMH includes tuition fees for Newington College, $27,819 to $48,141, which ABC does not mention. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian Bishop Anthony Randozzo appointed to senior Vatican role as Prefect of the Dicastery for Legislative Texts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Randozzo, 59, Bishop of Broken Bay Diocese, appointed Prefect of the Dicastery for Legislative Texts by Pope Leo XIV. Archbishop Randozzo will relocate to the Vatican in 3 months after serving in Broken Bay for 6.5 years. He was ordained as a priest in Brisbane in 1991 and studied canon law at the Pontifical Gregorian University. The Dicastery for Legislative Texts interprets and applies canon law across the Latin and Eastern Catholic churches. Archbishop Randozzo met Pope Leo XIV in Rome after being stranded in Dubai due to the Middle East conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Manly Sea Eagles sack Anthony Seibold as interim coach after 0-3 start in 2026 NRL season. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Seibold was sacked by Manly Sea Eagles after 3 games into the 2026 NRL season, ABC, SMH, ABC. Manly lost their first 3 games of the 2026 season, including a 33-16 loss to the Sydney Roosters on Thursday night, ABC, SMH, ABC. Kieran Foran was appointed as Manly's interim coach following Seibold's sacking, ABC, SMH, ABC. Seibold's contract was set to run until the end of the 2027 season, SMH, ABC. Seibold had a 49% win rate during his 76-game stint at Manly, SMH, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Seibold was the 3rd NRL-era coach sacked within the first month of a season, while SMH does not explicitly confirm this ranking, ABC versus SMH. SMH claims Seibold was told he was a dead man walking from December 2025, but ABC does not mention this timeline, SMH versus ABC. SMH reports Seibold's sacking was confirmed via a WhatsApp group message to players, while ABC does not mention this method, SMH versus ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Paul McCartney announces his 18th solo album The Boys of Dungeon Lane and its themes of nostalgia and introspection. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Paul McCartney is 83 years old as of the album announcement. The album title is The Boys of Dungeon Lane, referencing a Liverpool route to Speke Shoreline where McCartney spent his childhood. Andrew Watt is the producer of The Boys of Dungeon Lane, having previously worked with Elton John, Ozzy Osbourne, Iggy Pop, and the Rolling Stones. The lead single from the album is titled Days We Left Behind and debuted on BBC Radio Merseyside. The album is McCartney's 18th solo album, following McCartney 3, 2020. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 describes Days We Left Behind as a song that augurs well for the album but does not confirm the full album's quality, while Article 2 presents the album as a whole as McCartney's most introspective yet. Article 1 criticizes McCartney's recent solo albums for including ungainly contemporary lurches, while Article 2 does not mention these criticisms and focuses on the album's nostalgic and introspective qualities. Article 1 does not mention the album's focus on McCartney's third wife Nancy Shevell, while Article 2 explicitly states the album includes love songs about her. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 13-year-old girl charged in Melbourne's anti-Semitic hate crime and car theft spree. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 13-year-old girl from Melbourne's Bayside area was charged with 52 offences including reckless conduct endangering serious injury, multiple thefts, and threatening physical harm based on a protected attribute, anti-Semitism. The girl allegedly drove a stolen black Hyundai sedan in Hampton, Raponnea, and Caulfield between 25 to 28 March, shouting anti-Semitic remarks and throwing eggs at pedestrians. On the 28th of March, the stolen Hyundai allegedly swerved toward Jewish families crossing Hotham Street and Glen Eira Road in Raponnea around 7 p.m., narrowly missing them. The Hyundai was stolen from a gym in Caulfield on the 25th of March. A 45-year-old Brighton man was injured in a hit-and-run involving a stolen silver SUV on the 26th of March, where the passenger door was allegedly used to target a cyclist on St Kilda Street. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the 13-year-old was charged with threatening physical harm or property damage on ground of a protected attribute, anti-Semitism, while ABC does not mention this specific charge by name. The Guardian specifies the stolen Hyundai was allegedly stolen from a gym in Caulfield, using allegedly, but ABC omits this qualifier. The Guardian notes the e-scooter victims did not require medical attention and a passerby filmed the Volkswagen before a threat was made. ABC does not mention the threat or the passerby's role. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US court rulings hold Meta and Google liable for social media addiction and harm to minors. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A California jury found Meta and Google liable for negligence in designing addictive social media platforms, awarding $3 million, $4.3 million total, in damages to a 20-year-old plaintiff, KGM, in March 2025. Meta was ordered to pay $375 million in civil penalties in a New Mexico case for enabling child sexual exploitation and misleading users about platform safety, with the ruling issued on March 2025. The California case awarded $3 million in compensatory damages, $2.1 million to Meta, $900,000 to Google, and recommended an additional $3 million in punitive damages for malice, fraud, or oppression. The plaintiff, KGM, testified she began using YouTube at age 6 and Instagram at age 9, with her social media use peaking at 16 hours daily and leading to depression, self-harm, and body dysmorphia by age 13. Jurors in the California case found Meta and Google acted with malice, oppression, or fraud, a finding that supports punitive damages claims. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Van Badham, states Meta was found liable for 70% of harms in the California case, but ABC reports the jury assigned 70% liability to Meta without specifying the exact percentage of harm attribution. Meta's spokesperson claims KGM's mental health issues were profoundly complex and cannot be linked to a single app, while The Guardian, Article 10, highlights KGM's testimony that her mother was trying her best and not abusive, contradicting Meta's portrayal of her home life. YouTube disputed the plaintiff's usage records, claiming she averaged less than a minute per day, ABC, while the plaintiff testified she used the platform for up to 16 hours daily, multiple sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nepal's former PM KP Sharma Oli arrested over alleged role in deadly protest crackdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. KP Sharma Oli, 74, and former Home Affairs Minister Ramesh Lekak were arrested on Saturday, June 2025, over alleged involvement in the deaths of protesters during the Gen Z uprising in September 2024. The arrests occurred at their residences in Kathmandu, with Oli reportedly taken to a hospital due to kidney issues after arrest. Nepal's new Prime Minister Balendra Shah, Balan, was sworn in on Friday, June 2024, following a landslide election victory promising justice for the protest-related killings. A leaked government investigation report recommended 10 years in prison for Oli, Lekhak, and the former police chief for negligence in the crackdown, stating no effort was made to stop or control the firing and minors died. At least 19 protesters were killed when police opened fire during the Gen Z protests in September 2024, with nationwide unrest leading to additional deaths and the collapse of Oli's government. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 19 protesters killed by police firing in September 2024, with dozens more dying when offices were set ablaze, while ABC states 76 people were killed during the police crackdown. The Guardian says the leaked report stated it was not established that there was an order to shoot, but ABC does not mention this distinction. The Guardian notes Oli was arrested at his residence in Kathmandu, while ABC specifies he was arrested on the outskirts of the capital Kathmandu. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.